Hello, I'm Joe Skynet and I welcome you to another GreenStuffWorld video. In this video I'm going to show you how to paint flames using the fluorescent paints by GreenStuffWorld. Painting flames is all about transitions and gradients, so we'll be using this technique throughout the whole piece. We'll be starting with the lighter yellow fluorescent and work our way up through the darker colours to create our gradient. First we're going to lay down the base coats using the airbrush, and I start with the yellow fluorescent, and with the airbrush I give a nice coat to the lower part of the flames. Because fluorescent colours are very transparent, we're going to apply them over a white primer. This way we can get full vibrancy with just a couple of coats. Once I have a strong coat of that fluorescent yellow, I move on to the next colour, which is the fluorescent orange yellow. And I'm going to cover the middle portion of the flames and also go over a bit of the yellow that we did in the previous step. This way we'll start the gradient by overlapping the colours. If you realise, the middle section I'm covering the orange evenly, but when I point it over the yellow area I try to give the colour a bit of directionality as if it's coming from the top to leave the lower part in fluorescent yellow. Using small short bursts with the airbrush without cutting the air. This way, as I am applying the coats, it's automatically drying, letting me build up the saturation. Once that layer is ready, I move on to the next colour, which is the fluorescent orange. Now, same as before, I cover the top part of the flame evenly, but when I point over the orange and yellow layer, I try and always point from above. This way it will blend into the other colours. And now for the final base layer, I move on to the red fluorescent. And same as before, pointing from above with heavier coats on the top part and lighter coats while I move down to the yellow area. This is the result of the base layers. Now it's time to move on to the brush. Now with the brush using pure white, we're going to emphasize the yellow areas and create new ones. This will give the flames a much more realistic look. We're doing this now with the pure white to be able to go over after with the fluorescent colours to cover it. Here I'm trying to get the white in all the recesses of the flames. If you imagine a flame, the hottest parts, which in this case are yellow, will be the most inner parts of the flame. So I'm getting the white in all the recesses of the flames. It might look a bit messy now, but once we start blending in the colours, it will look much better. As I said, we're getting the white in all the recesses and having some fun with the shapes of the flames. I'm using a bit of thinner with the pure white so it can flow better. You don't have to be very careful with this step. The more randomness you can get into the flame, the better it will look after. Now once we've done all the shapes and got all the white in the recesses, I'm going to reinforce the flames with some white dots. After, when we get the fluorescent paint over these dots, it'll look like fire embers. Right, once we finish with the white and it's totally dry, I move on to the fluorescent paint, starting with the yellow one. And now we're just going to cover over all the white areas that we did in the previous step. As you can see, I'm getting quite a lot of the fluorescent yellow paint on. I'm not thinning it or anything, just getting it directly from the wet palette. And because they're so transparent paints, these fluorescent colours blend in perfectly. As you can see, I'm covering over all the white areas and the small dots, and it's not really changing the colour of the base layer. Now once all the white parts are covered with the yellow fluorescent paint, I move on to the orange fluorescent paint. And now I start from roughly halfway up the flames, and I'm going to cover over all the yellow areas. As I said before, painting flames is all about transitions and gradients. So these white lines we did before are going to be bright yellow on the lower part of the flame, and as we move to the top of the flame, these lines go darker. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the airbrush, and using this red colour, we're going to start darkening the flame on the higher part. These steps are really important to gain contrast on the flames, if not it will just look too bright and won't really give you that fire effect. As you can see, I'm trying to point from the top. This will create the illusion that the high part of the flame is colder than the lower part. Once we've gotten a bit of that colour into the flame, I add a couple of drops of black into the mix, directly into the airbrush, to darken that mix. And we're going to carry on emphasising the dark areas of the flame. Same as before, only pointing from above and with very light and short bursts of the airbrush. This way I can add the contrast gradually. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I move back to the brush and we're going to emphasize those embers again. Using the pure white, I create little dots here and there throughout the whole piece to cover these after with the fluorescent paints. And here we do the same thing about the gradients and transitions. The top spots will go in the darker fluorescent colours, and as we move down to the base of the flame, we use the lighter fluorescent colours. As you can see, I'm not being very careful in placing the paint only over the white dot. If there's a bit of paint that's on the outside of the dot, it actually helps in the effect to give the ember a kind of glow that looks really cool. Now we're going to do the same dots but with a darker colour. This will increase the contrast and give the flames a more realistic look. Well, we're almost finished. You could leave the flames as it is, but I'm going to give it a bit of a magical touch with this purple fluorescent paint. We're going to apply it with the airbrush over the dark areas that we did before, pointing from above. Just a couple of coats will be enough. Okay, so this is the result of the flame. I hope you've enjoyed the process and try it yourself. It's very easy to do and the result I think is quite nice. Thanks for watching, catch you in the next one. Bye.